Welcome to the Next Level Faith podcast. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland, best-selling author and life coach for ambitious women of faith. Join me each week to learn more about the strategies, tools, and mindset needed to arise from the overwhelm and create a joyful life you love. To learn how you can work with me further, grab your copy of my best-selling book, Arise and Shine, or check out how you can get your ticket to my Next Awake conference or retreat. Head over to juliannekirkland.com. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode, because the best version of you begins on your next level of faith. Welcome back to the Call to Courage series. On today's episode, you are going to be hearing from Megan Sjuts. Megan is a graphic designer turned creative consultant and coach. She's a podcast host and the founder of Building 07. With a decade of industry experience, Megan has mastered the art of visual communications. She is the owner of Building 07, a dynamic creative studio that provides creative consulting and coaching services. And today, Megan gives this entire interview while holding a baby on her hip. Megan has answered the call to courage by showing us how to have courage to adapt. Hey, welcome back to the Next Level Faith podcast. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland, and I'm so excited. Megan is here with us today. Welcome, Megan.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, and your little one. All right, what's his name?
Yes, this is Asher. You may hear some little coos and baby noises in the background. That would be my 5-month-old who didn't cooperate with his nap time today. So
that's cool. He's a part of the bigger mission is what he's all about, supporting women, amplifying their voice. So, Asher, we appreciate you. And what a great way to, exactly to bring on what we're talking about today, and that is the courage to embrace harmony in this journey of motherhood and growing your business. So talk a little bit about what that's been like for you.
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously a learning curve. This is our second. So we have, our daughter is 3, almost 4. And so, it's a learning curve through every season. Obviously, that as well as anyone. And so, it's constantly adjusting. It's learning new normals. I think, transitioning from 1 baby to 2 is obviously a huge transition. But, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine recently, actually on my podcast, and we were just talking about this idea of, I think the word balance is thrown around a lot, especially in our culture, especially for women. And so, but it's really this obscure, unattainable goal, right? Because how do you even balance, right? All the things, because balance really means holding everything at equal weight. Right. And that's really not attainable. I mean, any mom listening can relate to that. Some things, your day changes, things come up and things have to take priority. And, when you're in a season, especially right now for me, in a season of having a young baby, you're not going to be able to hold everything, every responsibility in your life equally. Some things it's going to have to ebb and flow. And so I think something that's felt just more natural and just more sustainable, I think, is finding harmony, right, between all the different things going on in your life. And some days, you may have to prioritize, maybe a sick kiddo at home over work or over a project you wanted to work on, but now you're not going to have margin or capacity for that. And so just giving yourself grace in that. And I think, finding harmony and rhythms versus holding yourself accountable to this idea of balance or schedules or rigid, frameworks for your day, I guess, that may get thrown off with things that you just can't predict or, have control over. And so I think for me, embracing that sense of, okay, we're just going to make it work and there's going to be harmony and things are going to ebb and flow and it's not going to look exactly the same day to day. And that's okay.
Yes, that's so true. I remember when, it's so true, Asher, you're right. When the quads were little and
I mean, like teeny tiny babies, and it would take an hour for them to eat, right? And they were having to eat every 2 hours.
Right.
And like the big thing then was that 4 a.m. club. Like, oh, to be a successful entrepreneur, you got to get up at 4 a.m. And I was like, I can't even hold my eyes open. Like, that's not going to be a thing for me.
Yeah.
And it's really embracing the things that you hear and chewing on them for a minute. You don't have to swallow everything that gets put in our mouth, like chewing on it and be like, is this going to serve me? Is this going to nourish me in the time that I'm in right now? And if not, spit it out. Right. Or I can take pieces of it and be like, yeah, this is going to be for me. And I'm going to try it this way and move there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Cause like you said, I think, things that work really well for other women or other families, just may not work for you in the season that you're in, the things you have going on, the things on your plate. And so, yeah, I think, there's no one right way to do anything. I think, just figuring out what works for you, and just knowing that that's probably going to change maybe on a weekly basis, maybe on a monthly basis. So like, it's just giving yourself grace and flexibility within that, to just find harmonies and rhythms that work for you, and just constantly assessing, like, is this still working for me? Right. Do I need to make changes or adjustments?
Right. And I think that self-reflection is so key, because when we're able to look back at the end of our day and reflect on our day with honesty, right, then we're able to have a more neutral thought pattern that's not high in emotion, during the time of it, right? And really look at it in a neutral thought pattern, be like, okay, I'm good with this. Can I add to this tomorrow? Can I do this tomorrow? And again, be prepared to know that anything can change. Like on Monday, I have my calendars already totally booked out and have all, it's all color coded and alarms are set. But on Monday, I got like 15 emails, because I have 6 kids and, they're in all these classes and they have all these teachers. So I got like 15 emails talking about the end of the year stuff that's happening over the next 2 weeks. And I was like, cool. None of my calendar is going to work now for the next 2 weeks. So it's like, all right, how can I puzzle piece this together to work best for my life, where I'm still honoring all areas of my life, but it's going to work for me where I can serve at the best level.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like, one thing that I have found, is like, one, like, God gives you the grace for the things that he gives you in this season to steward. And so like, he gives you the grace for it. And like, when he already knows the things that are going to come up that we can't predict. Right. And so like, I've just found that like his grace fills in those gaps so many times. Like we get stressed out and like, we're scrambling to try and make things work, but like, he's already given us the grace for it. And like, he fills in those gaps so often. I'm so grateful for that, because in the ways that I fall short, or, my schedule gets messed up, like you said, or things come up, or kids get sick or whatever. Like he fills in the gaps, and he gives us the grace. If he's, called you to do something in this season of your life, no matter how crazy the season is that you're in, he's already given you the grace for it. And so like, that's just such a reassurance for me.
Yeah. And two, it's that ability, like right now you're rocking your baby who's supposed to be sleeping. Yeah. Right. And so he's in that, like, I kind of want to sleep, but I don't really want to sleep, know? And I feel like pre-pandemic to come on a podcast with this situation was like so taboo, right? It was like, oh, you're so unprofessional. And like, that's not the case. Yeah. The pandemic opened so many people's eyes to just how much a mother has to deal. And the complexity of it all. And I think I'm grateful that there has been this new light shed on what it actually looks like to integrate all parts of our life into our message. Because right now, yes, God has given you the grace for like Megan to handle it without fear and anxiety and worried about being judged and all that. And at the same time, like, you have had to say, you know what? I can't worry about what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
God has called me to share my message. And I know that he is going to open the ears to those who need to hear it. And he's going to close the ears to those who don't.
Yeah.
And I think when we can approach life in that way, and business, like, that is where harmony comes into play, is where you don't have to have it look a certain way. It doesn't have to meet certain people's expectations. Like, our purpose is to glorify God through what we've been called to do. And when we can let go of trying to please everybody else and embrace the call, like, that's where harmony and flow comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think to the point of our conversation today, I do think it takes courage and faith, to do that. But I think you just get to a point, like, especially as a mom, like, where you're just like in that mode of, okay, I'm just going to make it work. And if I feel like, this is something that God is asking me to do, you kind of get to a place where you're like, almost out of necessity, just letting go of like the perfectionism and it has to be perfect. Cause at the end of the day, you just have to make it work. And so, even if it's not the way that you expected it to look, or it's, not going according to your plan, you just kind of embrace it and just trust God with the process, right? Of how it plays out, trust him with the outcome. And you just show up and do the best that you can with what you have to work with that day. And so, I think that changes, sometimes it does all go well and according to plan and you don't get interrupted, but the reality is it's not like that all the time.
Right. It's like 90% not like that.
Yeah.
So
yes. Yeah.
Like, if it does go 100% according to plan, I'm just blown away. I'm like,
yeah.
What? Did that just happen? Is that a real thing? This is so cool. But I have also embraced that, like, silliness that my kids have brought out of me.
Mm-hmm.
That it's okay. It's okay to have fun. Like, I'm recording a podcast in their swim team t-shirt right now.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Like, I also lead a women leaders podcast. And, I was interviewing a New York Times bestselling author who's this like high-end coach to, all these huge corporations. And I interviewed her in a t-shirt and I didn't care.
Yeah.
Because we're people.
Yeah.
We can like relate to people as people. Such a difference. And there's so much room and safety to explore, what we've been called to do and how we are supposed to be able to connect with other people.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's refreshing too, especially for women and moms who are listening, to just hear like, oh, like someone else is showing up just as their self. And they're not trying. I think we're all getting kind of tired of the polished and curated. And, I think we just all appreciate people showing up as themselves and being real, like you said, versus, just putting on this polished persona and you're like, oh, well, what's really going on behind the scenes, And so I think it's just refreshing for people to show up that way, especially with the, kind of Instagram and social media culture that, that we kind of live in right now. It's nice it's refreshing and it's nice. And I think it's encouraging too. And it encourages other people to kind of live their life in that way too, to show up as their whole selves and be real and not feel like they have to put on a face, for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what has been like your biggest like practical adjustment? Like, have you utilized a Google Calendar, or like, what's been your biggest, like, this has really helped me through this particular season?
Honestly, I mean, a big thing that happened, a big transition that happened for us in the fall of last year was my daughter starting preschool. And so having that structure that I can count on, like, even though I have a little one now that's still at home with me, having that structure as a tool, has really helped. And so I think just embracing, even though it was a change, a big change, a big adjustment for her and for us, I think embracing those things, just kind of going back to the harmony, like, yes, it was a big change, especially for kind of like what our mornings look like. But it also helped me to be able to schedule podcast interviews, to, just be able to do things like this because she's at school right now, even though I have Asher, with me still, and there's still that level of unpredictability. Right. But, just, I think embracing changes that come along and leveraging them, or, using them to your advantage, can be really helpful. So I think that, and trying to think of just like tools or things that I use. I mean, in terms of business, I definitely use a lot of automated tools that help me, in terms of like planning stuff out, like, talent, like calendar planning tools and things like that, that remind me of things that I would forget otherwise. Because, you get distracted, especially as moms, and forget things. And so I think just having practical things in place. Asana is a big thing that I use to help me keep work projects organized and, client stuff organized on top of just like things that I need to do and not forget to do. So I think finding the tools that work for you, because there's a ton of options out there. And I know I used to get overwhelmed by options, but just like pick one that feels right for you and make it work, and like implement those things. So it helps me not let things fall through the cracks, because I can rely on things that will kind of do the reminding for me, and kind of set up the scheduling and, just a workflow for me. Otherwise, sometimes I forget things, or, things kind of fall through the cracks. And so doing little things like that have really helped.
Oh, absolutely. I remember, and I would love to say it only happened once, but it did not, Megan. It happened multiple times where I forgot my kids at school. Like I was in the salon, and I remember one time, it was when they were in like half a day, so I had to pick them up at 12. So I would like drop them off at 8:30, and then I picked them up at 12. And I was just in my office, just like click, 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 working. Everything was going great in the salon. And I get a phone call. Sorry, my dog just ran into a door. It's fine. But I get a phone call, and I'm like, hey, it's like, hey, this is so-and-so at the school. And I was like, hey, how are ya? She was like, good. Are you coming to pick up your kids today? And I was like,
nice.
Like bus change, transportation changes, all that kind of stuff as they started to get older. Mm-hmm. Again, for me, I found that if I think I'm going to remember it, I need to set a reminder. But it's your children. You're not going to forget your children. Yes, you can, and you might. And I did. So there is no shame in utilizing tools to help you perform at your best. You know what I mean? Like trying to keep things in your brain that can be kept not in your brain. It opens up space for you to be more creative, to have a spontaneous dance party in your kitchen with your kid. Like it opens up the space for you to really enjoy the harmony that you're trying to create.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. And I think, like you said, there's a lot of freedom in that, when you can rely and lean on things where it no longer has to take up space in your brain. It frees up. It just gives you like white space in your brain. I feel like, to be able to tap into your creativity, to, have that creative flow and find creative inspiration around you that you might otherwise miss if you're distracted by trying to remember all the things that you have to do in a day. So I think, tools can be really helpful for that.
And what are you doing right now in your business to help others? Like what is it that you're focused on right now?
I mean, right now, so for a little context, my background is in graphic and web design. And so, creativity is something that is really near and dear to my heart. And so just over the years, that has looked like teaching classes, that has looked like coaching, that has looked like working with design clients. And so right now in this season, it's, stewarding a podcast and sharing just messages and I think encouragement and inspiration and also just practical things that would have been helpful for me as a creative 10 years ago. And so that's something that's really important to me because, just looking back to that season, for me, I felt, isolated. I felt a little lost, not really sure who to turn to for advice, not really sure who to turn to for just to ask questions, like when I felt stuck in something. And so, and even just being overwhelmed, like going back to like choosing a tool to help you in your business, like even little decisions like that felt so overwhelming in that season. And so, so in this season for me, what I'm doing in my business or just in the ways that I'm serving, that could look like, sharing inspiration and insight through my podcast. Sometimes it looks like coaching and working with other creatives. And, it could look like consulting, and I'm still doing, some design work, just not at the capacity that I was a few years ago because of motherhood. And so again, making those adjustments to find harmony. It doesn't have to look the same through every season. And so just, finding a balance that works. And so I still do, some consulting with clients and, in other ways, it's just sharing something that I've learned, a lesson that I've learned, through my podcast or through social media or something like that in a way that's, I feel like is going to encourage or inspire other creatives. And so, that's a big part of my heart for what I want to do in this season, how I want to serve others with my gifts and my experiences as a creative, and also just where I feel like God is leading me, to serve and use my gifts to help others, in this season that I'm in.
That's great. And what's your name of your podcast?
The podcast is Live Creatively. And so again, it's just candid conversations with other creatives. Could be anything from practical insight about a tool and how to use it to help your business, or something as, inspiring or encouraging as how to walk through anxiety in a difficult season as a creative and how that impacts your creativity. And so, it's just important, I think, to me to share messages like that, because I think there's a lot of, I think for me personally, I firmly hold that everyone is creative. And so I think a lot of times, we can kind of categorize creatives as designers or artists or musicians. But I think, the message of how do I live creatively, I think is relatable to anyone in whatever you're doing, in whatever season of life that you're in, whatever you do vocationally.
Yeah.
What does it look like to live creatively? And so I just, it's important to me to share those conversations and those messages and just the stories and journeys of others who are living that out well.
That's so true. And, we are creative because we were made in his image and he is the creator. Like that's the first attribute that we learn about God.
Yeah.
Is that created,
Yeah.
So absolutely. We are all creative, and meant to create, and we use our words to create. And so I love that you're using your voice through your podcast to do that. And we'll be sure to drop the link to your socials and the show notes. But Megan, thank you so much for today. Thank you for your time. He fell asleep, so I'm whispering.
He can't hear you, so it's okay.
We're so glad that you took the time to come and share an authentic message about, you're living it out right now in this moment. of what harmony actually looks like. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me. Thank you. And I just, I hope that just being real and having this conversation encourages other women, other mothers, other creatives who are listening.
Oh, I know it will. I know it will. All right, that's it. That's all we have for you today, my friends. Remember, the best version of you begins on your next level of faith. Bye for now.